Welcome to this episode of Nordic Coffee Chats. We have a very exciting episode. The topic of today is belonging in Denmark, and we have our wonderful guest with us today, Stephen Burrell. He is a consultant, a certified leadership coach, a DEIB advocate. He is one of the golden oldies, as we call it sometimes, or the OGs here in Denmark. So we are ready to have an amazing conversation. My name is Kathy Boris Siddiqui, and I'm here with.
Leslea Peterson. Hi.
So we
And
will
Stephen
jump
Burrell.
in. Yeah,
Yeah,
Stephen
Stephen
is here.
Burrell. Hi. Let's
I'm
just
here.
jump
I'm
in.
here. I'm a real person. Yeah.
Stephen, what brought you to Denmark? Tell us that. Give us a
I
bit
was. I
about
was.
you.
I'm going to be short, but say that my wife is Danish, and we were living in London, and we had, I consider, a good life but we had a little daughter, and it's not that it was a but ever since my daughter was born, my ex-wife wanted to come home. So, and home being Denmark, and of course, like most people, I guess, was wondering why. I mean, and her reasonings were two things. One of them was, of course, being close to her family and friends. That was one. And the other thing, what she mentioned, which I always smile about, is to be close to water. Because in London, the closest we get is 50 miles down to Brighton. So home. And then, of course, my daughter at the time was 18 months when we came. We felt as though, I felt as though that maybe it was the best because, of course, coming from the inner cities in London, you realise that life could be a little bit more hit and miss in London rather than in Denmark. It's safe and it's secure and it's easier and etc. 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 So yeah, that's what brought me to Denmark. The short version.
Yeah. So when do you think you felt like you belonged? So your wife came back. Was it difficult to her for, to acclimatize, get back to being in Denmark? But, and how was it for you? When did you first feel like was there a moment when you felt you belonged or did it take time? Can you tell us a little bit more about
No,
that?
it's a different time. I've been in Denmark for 29 years, almost 30 years. So for me, it's before the internet. So before the internet, people had this thing called conversation in person, and you could meet people on trains, and people were there were books and newspapers that people read. There was not telephones, and people hid them. So it's like a different time. I came to Denmark when there was curiosity. My ex-wife's an architect, so it was pretty easy for her to get work here. And of course, I had a merchandise business. Merchandise meaning I made promotional material for bands. So I worked a lot. My background's in the fashion industry. So when I came, well, in England from the mid 90s, I had a merchandise company working with lots of the bands that you know. And when I came to Denmark, I didn't really know what to do, but I knew that I had Levi's was my biggest client in the UK. And I started there. My second client, or maybe my first big client here, was Carlsberg. And from there, I met some really good people. And they actually, I mean, just imagine that this is the time we're in where you have a meeting, the first meeting, and my friend Neil, he said to me that, well, he's a friend now, but at the time he was like, I'm trying to sell him some products, etc., etc. He says that Denmark is a tough place, but I'm going to help you. And he gave me a name of five people who I should meet, and two of them are journalists. Just say that. So
Stop.
that's how I came. I had a soft landing. I say it all the time to people. My first New Year's Eve in Denmark was at Hendrik Bosworth's home. So like when you say I've never felt that I never belonged. And it could be my friends say it's your personality, blah blah blah, and I say no. I come from love. I come from love, and Denmark is not that far away from the UK. That's where my parents were. That's where my family were. That's where my friends were. So coming here when I didn't come because I needed something from Denmark. I've never seen this place as being better than where I come from. I see it as just as good. With the pitfalls, there's good and bad everywhere. But it's definitely a better place to raise my children. Yeah.
Yeah. Kathy, what about you? Because your set stories like Stephen, we all came for love, right? Or love
Mm.
Mm.
pats, as you call them, Kathy. Kathy phrased that a few years ago, and I loved it. I've used it ever since.
Copyright it.
Copyright, Kathy, copyrighted.
Mm.
But how did you feel? I mean, when did you first feel like you belonged? Because Stephen felt like pretty much he stepped on the soil and he was here. I mean, how about you?
Yeah. I always find it really interesting how different our stories are, right? That it's not the same. And I think when people try to kind of say, "Oh, Denmark is like this," or "Danes are like this," I,
Mm.
I always have a hard time with that because I think we should never generalize. And also, all of our stories are very individual. There might be common threads. So for me, it took much longer. And I think the sense of belonging for me came with really allowing myself to kind of let go and stop doing things the way I thought that this was the right way. This is what I know from Poland or from the US, but actually leaning into what was said to me by the Danes, try this or go here, do that. And when I started doing that, I started seeing different results. And then I thought, okay. I'm starting to feel that I get it. I'm starting to get an understanding of how people live here, how the culture is. And I think that's one side of it. The other part is also, as Stephen said, when you get to meet people and people embrace you and they try to help you and they give you tips, they have dinner with you, they go for a coffee. And that's when for me, it's people always. Belonging equals people. So when I have some people around me, that I know I can pick up the phone, call up, meet up with them. That gives me a good sense of belonging.
Yeah.
On that note, we could say that because I've been here for so long, I came
Yeah.
before thanks Fogg. I came before
Ah.
the rhetoric around Udlands politic. There wasn't no Udlands policy.
Yeah.
There wasn't anyone saying that you had to actually. I mean, the big thing was around
Yeah.
language, as it always has been, but learn the language. In those days, you had 3 years of grace within friends and family. So if you had been here, everyone always asks that question, how long have you been here? When you said the time, then they'll give you a bit of a break. But
Hmm.
once you got to that 3 year mark, they expect you to speak Danish. So whereas that's not the case now. It's a different time now. You know? It's like day
So
one.
glad.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I got about 3 years in, 4 years in, and I thought, "Do you know what, Leslie, you can be miserable for the rest of your life, or you can look at all the good things about here." And I think I had a little mindset change. And then obviously getting a job that helped as well because I felt completely like, who am I? What am I doing? Because I used to identify myself with my career. And I think then when I found my first friend, 5 years, and my first Danish friend, and I thought, and then things just started changing. I mean, I have a faith. I don't ever keep that quiet. So for me, finding a really good church was good because then I had the community you wanted, and that
Mm.
took like that. They've been here like 14 years. So that helped me. So I think there's a few things, and then suddenly I thought, "Do you know what? It's not bad here."
Mm.
And then suddenly I was flying home and thinking, I'm going home from England
Mm.
now. And
Mm.
before it would
Yeah.
always be, I'm so desperate to go to England. I'm so desperate. Now I just thought, oh, I'm going home. So I think, you feel that's when I really thought, oh, actually, I think I belong here. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, it's about fitting, or do you think it's about adapting, Stephen? What do you think belonging?
I I missed your first part of the question. Sorry.
Oh, do you think it's about fitting in or adapting
Well,
belonging?
I think for me, definitely, it's about being yourself. I mean, I understood listening to both Kathy and yourself that you felt as though you had to change. I think that maybe the difference is because I am a 2 meter tall black male, then I don't fit in the UK. In fact, I don't fit in anywhere. Basically, I've never felt I fitted in. So it's a case of maybe I've been prepared for Denmark, prepared for being othered
Mm.
all my life, perhaps. So maybe I've never felt the need to change to become like somebody else because I can never be Danish, if that makes sense. In the looking at the same of being blonde, blue-eyed Dane, that will never happen. It's impossible for me. Whereas I think that both you have an ability where someone might think you're Danish. Nobody ever think that I'm Danish. So therefore, that yeah, just I never felt that I should change. I can give you a funny story about being at Roskilde Festival the first time I was there in '97. That I was around a bunch of people. I won't name them because I don't want to embarrass them. But anyway, that one of the guys said to me, "It's not because we don't like you. It's just the fact we've got our own friends." And I looked at him. I started to laugh. He said, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Because do you really think I need you guys to be my friends? I got so many friends already. I got so many friends." But he said, okay, okay. It's like little taking the back. And I thought to myself, this thing about that's the first time I heard the thing about people having friends from childhood. Not yeah, yeah. So I mean, so my story is a little bit different. And again, I've been a little bit longer in a different time, and also me as a person because my parents are immigrants. So the
Mm.
immigrant journey that they had to go through in the UK is something I didn't have to go through. I belonged from day one, if that made sense.
Yeah.
No one can say, where you from? Where you really from? I said, well, I was born in Dulwich Hospital. That's where I'm from. That's called SC22, you know? It's like, I
Yeah,
don't know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose, yeah, in some ways, like I think Danes, if you look a little bit like them or you sound a bit different, it's like, oh, where you from? And I've heard that so many times by people, oh, but where are you from originally if you're not white? And it
Yes.
used to really bug me. Um, so I think belonging is one thing. And to be honest, I had really good advice before I moved. My friend, her big sister moved to Paris when she was 23 to get married. And she said, Leslea, I'm fluent in French. I sound French. People think I'm French because she's been there for 20 plus years. And she said, but I'll always be the English girl in Paris because I didn't grow up with listening to the same stories, same
Mm.
programs. There's certain things that I just don't get because I never grew up. And you know, it's okay.
Hmm.
And I thought,
That's
oh yeah. So
beautiful.
now I think
Yeah.
I didn't get that. So after I don't get the Danish joke or I didn't know the song or something that my family talk about, I think it's okay. It's okay to not know that
Yeah,
because
but
I
I
can
can
go
say to you,
home and do that.
I'll give you
Yeah.
another funny story about being in Sony Music because I told you I used to work for merchandise, and I've never heard of Gasoline or Kim Larson. You know, I
Oh,
was
yeah.
there to talk to them about Oasis, who I knew, but they knew Gasoline and Kim Larson. So it's always got quite funny because, of course, there's lots of things, and of course, I don't think that I have a problem with somebody laughing at the fact that I don't know. And I think
Yeah.
that what I've realised now in my current capacity is I'm around a lot of people who are so sensitive about the fact that they don't want to learn the language because they think that they're going to become a 3-year-old. I think, well, you can't learn a language by missing that stage, so they don't want to learn the language. They don't want to be around people where they're not comfortable being the smartest voice or the smartest mind in the room. I think that's the opposite to where I am. I find it so thrilling to be educated about the local history. Like when the first time I heard about Grundtvig, for example, and I thought this is fantastic. What a fantastic story! What a fantastic way to have a fundament about this in your way of the way you should live as a Dane. How beautiful! You know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, you come from a few different places. You've moved around, so Poland to the States and then to Denmark. So you've done a few different moves. Um, what would you say was different about Denmark compared to like the other two places? Do you think when you moved?
I think, for me, I'm not a good example. Maybe I am, but it's different periods of my life. So I was a child when I first moved, and then I was a young adult going to university, and I repatriated myself back to Poland. So it's interesting for me just to look at myself sometimes and to think, how it differs depending on how old you are, what circumstances there are. Are you moving alone? Are you with family? Um, and every move has been different. I think they teach you so much. I agree also with you, Stephen. I don't think I've always said we can't try to be like the locals. We can learn from them, and we have that wonderful gift that we get to learn all these things and explore and in a different way because for them it's normal, right? It's the norm, it's daily life. For us, it's new. But I think we have to also be true to ourselves, our roots, and to say openly there are some things we take from some cultures and some things we don't. It depends on what aligns with us, what our values are. And I think those can also change as we move. That's what I've seen in myself, that maybe if I was living in one and the same place, my values would be quite different from what they are today because having lived in different places, meeting so many people who come from all over the world, I think it changes you. I think maybe people don't even realize what impact that has on us. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's different. And I think, and we all moved to Copenhagen, right, to start with, or not?
Mm.
No, I was
Yeah.
in Odense.
Oh yeah, forgot about that. Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was still international, but for you, Steve, when you like nearly 30 years ago, was it very Danish? I know that sounds stupid because we're in Denmark, but you know what I mean? Like now it's so international. Like, I could land and hear English all around me, so I didn't feel completely alone. But did you find that you were one of the few Brits here at the time, or
Oh, to be honest with you, I don't really know because I've always had this thing that I spent my time around Danish networks, if that makes sense, to be around Danes. So I think that there was, of course, it's less international because, of course, Copenhagen over the last. I mean, just think back that Terminal 3 wasn't there. There's two terminals at the airport. There was no bridge to Sweden. It was a hovercraft, etc., etc. Nordhavn, which has got 50,000 people, was empty. So the
Mm.
things that lots of things have changed. I've seen so much change. I mean, the bridge to Jutland, Lillebelt, the Storbelt, and all the rest of the. I mean, so many things have changed. I mean, so many things, so many things. But when it comes to international, when it comes to English, I mean, the thing is that when one of the things which I find is that, well, I would say Danes of old, or maybe Danes in general, because they are curious, but it's like maybe today there's a little bit more of a layer you have to go through. A bit like an onion, you have to take off the skin before, or the outer layer before you get to the next layer. And if you get to the next layer, then they are just lovely people. But the thing is that that layer is getting harder and harder because they think they know you. Not whereas where I came to a time when people they would ask you questions because they want to get to know you, and also the whole thing around what Kathy said is about like we can learn from them, but I'm pretty sure all of my friends will say they learned a lot from me as well,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because I came from somewhere else and I had a different opinion and I listened to similar music to what they were listening to, but I heard it in a different way than they did.
Mhm.
Or I saw the
Yeah.
similar films. And also, again, one more thing to talk about. I'm not going to keep harping on about the past, but in the past there was a delay, right? Where today everything is released at the same time, whether it's music, or whether it's film, whether it was the Teletubbies. Everything is. People forget the way it used to be. And one of the things that I think, and I encourage my children all the time to study history. Don't necessarily have to go to university to study it, but just read about what happened in the past. The way things were before, because that's where you learn a lot. And of course, you have this wonderful feeling of gratitude and to be grateful to be in the time we're in. You know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
When you
did I
mentioned
answer the question?
when you mentioned the Danish networks, so I have a couple questions that will lead up to that. One is, did you go to Danish school to learn the
Yes,
language? Yes.
yes, yeah, yeah. I did, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I met lots of expats, but they're from everywhere. I don't think there's any. I think there's one Brit in the class, but there were Canadians. There were Belgium. There was myself. I'm trying to think. I can't remember who else was there. There's one guy from Scotland. I mean, yeah, there was, yeah,
Yeah.
but, yeah. I did,
Did you
yeah. I went to
learn
Kiss.
quickly the language?
Yes, but I stopped going quickly as well because I our second child was born in February of '98, and then my ex-wife had two children. So therefore, well, we had two children. So I had to then stop school to actually participate um, in the home because of course it's tough. Well, both as
Yeah.
mothers, it's hard. Um, so yeah, um, so I didn't go to school for long, but long enough to learn. And it wasn't until COVID that I did all these PD3. I mean, I didn't go to school. I just did the exams because I thought I need some papers. But yeah, before I didn't have any papers. Absolutely zero to say that I spoke Danish until COVID. When one was sitting at home thinking to itself like, okay, this is going to go on for a while. What am I going to do? Okay, yeah,
Yeah. And
yes,
then you
but
said that you were joining a lot of Danish networks. I think this is
mm,
also interesting for the listeners.
mm, mm.
How did you go about that? Was it through
Well,
friends or?
no, but when you work in the fashion industry, you've got a high level of call. And when you've got this high level of call, then other people have got high levels of call. So therefore, there were back in the day something called Bongarama. I don't know if you know that. You ever heard of it? It was men. It was around 600 men from the cultural. You think of back in the day. You remember a nightclub called NASA? I don't know. Maybe it's before your time. I don't know. Anyway, there was lots of things like so. There's things that I can invite people to, and people invite me to lots of things. And my default back in the day was no, because of course it's a family. But when I did get a free night out, then I had a yes, and I could go into the right places and the right guest list, etc., etc. So it just elevates you. You know the way it is in. I mean, the other thing we should just talk about is that, and this is the last time I'm going to go back in the past, that when you went out in the back in the day, it wasn't the tables that you have nowadays, where people have got a table and blah, blah, blah. It's not like that. In the old days, it was just you were around other people and you had conversation. Remember those days when we had conversation? So I met lots of people through social events like receptions, blah, blah, blah. But because of coming from, I'm guessing, I don't know why I was invited in, because of course um, I mean, very, very cultural from actors to musicians to designers to nightclub owners to artists to blah blah blah, and you were invited in. Somebody had to say that you deserve to be there. So yeah, that was my. This is before Facebook, another thing, you know. So we go back some time, but that's the Copenhagen I had. That's the Denmark I had. But one of the things I just mention something is that one of the things that I talk about a lot when I do workshops, especially, is that when you as a foreigner like me as an international, someone who doesn't come from Denmark, when I go from Copenhagen up to Aalborg, I'm just as foreign as or the Danish guy is just as foreign as I am. They are tribal, a bit like we are in the UK as well, about where are you from, which part of the country are you from. So yeah, I think that the networks were open, and yeah, I know a lot of people still. I mean, whenever I'm out and about, I meet somebody who remembers something from back in the day. You know, yeah.
Did you find it was more about work that got you your networks, or did you find that it was a little bit of both by the end of it?
But also, you start off with the first thing is that you have kids. That's the first. Okay, so therefore that you are, and I say my children are beautiful people, they're beautiful human beings. So you're adding to the gene pool. That's the first. So then that gives you a softer value because people see you like taking care of your kids. Like I used to take my kids to all the sports, all the dance. My ex-wife didn't learn to drive until many years afterwards. So I was a driver. So to dance, to basketball, to swimming, to whatever it was, I took them. So I was always there. You know, so and you know, in those days, parents used to wait around. I don't know how it is nowadays. Wait around. You start talking to each other, and that's the thing. And then, I mean, so children was one, work was the other, which gave because I didn't work for a company, I worked for myself. So therefore, and I worked for most of the biggest Danish companies. I worked with them. So it was yeah, I had a network, and then like I said, it's coming from the later on when I was working much more in the fashion. Then you met again the cool people, so-called cool people, the people see in magazines. You know, you knew them because you were there with them in not always at the same time, but if it was Paris, if it was Milan, if it was London, I was there. You know, it's a different level. I mean, I think so. I don't know the answer because, of course, I've never really thought about um, what is it, what made it easy for me to be here. But maybe you're right. Maybe I should write a book about it to see if I can flush out some memories.
Hmm. It's a
Mm,
good idea.
It's changed so much from 30 years ago. I've got a friend who's been here
mm,
40 plus years, and she said Denmark was so different. Like it was expensive to fly home, it was expensive
yeah,
to
yeah,
call, and that was
yeah,
it. So she said I didn't really do a lot of it. So she said I had to really just get stuck in because I didn't have a choice.
mm,
And I thought, my gosh, I don't think I could have done that at 21. I don't think I would have survived. I found it difficult at 40. So, I arrived here quite late, but I think if you could say something to like somebody who's just arrived, what recommendations would you both give, really? What would you say, Stephen? Right, you've just arrived. What advice would you give to somebody who's just arrived?
I'll say be open, and I'll definitely say without any doubt, don't change. You know, because of course is that what makes you different is the fact that you are different. So be yourself. As the advice I was given many years ago, all the way back from childhood from my mother, was if you be yourself, you'll be comfortable everywhere. And
Hmm.
everyone always says you can't be anybody else, but people coach you. People try and become something they're not, and you can do it, but you're not going to be comfortable. And in my coaching capacity, I can see a lot of people go down in stress because of it. It's much easier to be yourself, for the good or the bad. Now, I'm assuming that being yourself, it means that you are a good person, that you're polite and you're kind and you're sweet and you're open and you're not necessarily somebody who's quote unquote a bad person, whatever that means in inverted commas. But yeah, so to try and be yourself and then find community. Find a community. Now it can be through sport, because that's the thing I did mention to you guys. I played football for 17 years in Denmark. You know, so I've got lots of things so playing sport is also a great thing to do because it's a great leveler. And if you play music or you like music, because you always got to find out, I've always felt anyway, is find out what you've got in common with people rather than looking for differences. And normally I'm a big football fan, and that's how I Niels and I connected because he had a team of '86, a Danish team which played in Mexico World Cup on his wall, and I knew all the players. He didn't understand how I knew all those players because I'm from London, but I'm a good football fan. You know, I'm a big football fan. You know, so that's why I knew them. And if you're into music, like I recently spoke to a friend who plays the guitar, And he said he stopped his band, but it's like, why? Find another band, go and play, go and jam, do something, get out, do your thing. So I'll say that take what you have from abroad, from wherever you come from, and try and be yourself. Not to say you should not adapt to the Danish way of life, but yourself is what makes you different, and you'll never. The cut and paste, so you can cut yourself out and suddenly become Danish, it ain't going to happen. Definitely not. Not in the world we live in today. So just be yourself
So
and
true.
find community. And
Love
I
that.
agree.
I have
Yeah.
a question about your career because you've mentioned, and this is again very interesting, I think, for a lot of people who are listening, that as internationals, we often transition also careers. So you've done a lot of different work and different career shifts. The coaching, for example, what drew you to that? Is it personal? Is it that you felt there was, tell
I
us.
used to no, but I can say that coaching. I've been doing it for years. I mean, that's the thing. It's just a case of deciding that this is a career path. I think in 2010, 11, I guess it's 11. In 10, 11, Jaeger bought Aquascudum. I was working with a British band. I was working with them, take care of the Nordics, so traveling all over. And they gave me some money and said that Stephen, you don't have to help us anymore. We do it ourselves. And that was great for me. But I had this what I call a crisis of saying that what am I going to do with my life, because now you've got a bundle of money, you're divorced, and you think to yourself, okay, what am I going to do? And what I realized I should do is give back. And that's where it came from. So I started to do something called Foreningen New Dancer, which you may or may not know what it is. Today they've got something called Lee Agdan, which is pretty similar. I think that's just the spin off. But before Lee Agdan, something called Foreningen New Dancer. And I was one of the few quote unquote foreigners who was helping internationals to actually settle in Denmark, like as a mentor, to find jobs, find work, CVs, etc., etc., etc. So I've always been doing this, but intentionally. Then yeah, coaching has been yeah very much a big part of my life in the recent life, the last I don't know 5, 7, 9 years. Very much so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the work that you do with diversity, equity, inclusion,
Mm.
belonging, how did that start? Was it just natural that you started doing that? Was it people
Yeah.
asking you to what you
Well,
think?
no, no, no. But I think it's always quite funny because it's like for me, it's always things. I don't know how to describe. The only way I can describe it is like recently we had the solar eclipse. But if you had these glasses on and you saw what was going on, you suddenly realize you see something which you couldn't see without the glasses. Okay, so just imagine that if you have these glasses on, which I have, which says that I can see connections between things other people can't see. So it's just simple. The fashion industry is the only industry in the world where women get paid much more than men and nobody questions it. And then everyone smiles and says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, female models have always been paid more than male models.
Hmm.
Nobody questions it. The other thing is that the level or the amount of males in the fashion industry are homosexual is higher, so a much higher percentage than anyone else. So you can keep going and keep going and keep going. So for me, when people say about this DEI, for me, it's just words. I mean, it's nothing. It's like I've lived this life, for many, 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 many years. I've been around. It's just the case I can see and I have stories about like the whole thing around just things that people with disabilities, people who are our challenge, height challenge. We call them dwarfs in England. I don't know what they're called here, but they're called the same. But they've always been integrated, in the fashion industry. It's always been cool to be different. It's never been cool to be the same. So it's like for me, this whole thing around diversity, equity, and inclusion, create a sense of belonging. It's just the right thing to do. And I've been in the right thing for a long time, and I've been talking about the right thing for a long time. But now people actually pay me or hire me to do either keynotes or workshops to talk about things which have just, I mean, I've got hundreds of, I mean, maybe thousands of stories about um, things that people take for granted. To say that they don't really understand that just a simple thing like I said earlier about Aalborg, going to Aalborg and realizing that in Aalborg, a Copenhagener is just as much of a foreigner as an international
Hmm.
because they don't like you if you're from Copenhagen. Skula Copenhagen, they don't. You're not welcome in the same way, So yeah, for me, it's a playground that I've been in for a long time. Everything that I've done, when you say I did different things. The red thread throughout my whole career is about people. You know, I've worked with sales and marketing. I've worked with fashion, like in the sales and marketing space, but for fashion companies. I've worked with mentoring. I've worked with lecturing. I've worked with coaching. I do keynote speaking. It's always about people. You know, sometimes it's one to one, sometimes it's one to many, but it's always people. So the red threads, I'm a humanist, as I say to everybody, that I love people. I'm not so good at animals, not because I don't like them, I just don't know them the way I know humans. Um, and because being a humanist, then yeah,
With you.
means you
Yeah.
follow behaviour. If you follow behaviour, then yeah, lecture over.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Kathy, how do you feel about like because we're people as well,
Mm,
and
mm,
my whole job is about people,
yes.
and I think that's why it ticks my box. And Kathy's exactly the same in her job as
Mm,
well. So I think the three of us really, I think it's probably why we all got on from day one.
yes.
Really, it
Yes.
was a bit, we just hit it off because we like talking, we like meeting people, we like
Mm,
find. And it's not that I'm drawn to people from the UK or whatever, um, but you do tend to navigate towards people who have similar interests, similar sense of humor, you know. But the one thing I think I find, which is different about living here than would be at home, I'd probably choose who I wanted to spend time with in England. Whereas here, I just get to meet so many different people. I think I
mm,
would never think I would be friends with you, but I just am, and we got on really,
yep,
really
yep.
well. I think that's a nice thing about relocating, moving to a new country. You actually get this breadth of friendship that you just simply wouldn't have if you just stayed in your hometown and you never moved and you know.
That's so beautifully said. But then, if you flip it, this is back to what saying that what I do is that you flip it and say to yourself, okay, this is the way you see things, and you made that comment. But then think of a Dane. It's the same for them. They haven't moved anywhere, so they see that for them it's much easier to be around the people they have chosen. So therefore, it's harder for them to let you in, us in, and if for us, in order to be let in, then we have to be ourselves. I mean, if that makes sense, you know, or they let you in because you play sport with them, or your kids are in the same school, or blah blah blah. There has to be a reason, otherwise they won't do it. I mean, why would they do it? For what reason? Unless it's entertainment, you know. If you
Mm.
want to be the entertainer, you know, you like in regards of that you want to go to dinner parties and be the funny guy, or the funny woman, you know. If that's the
Yeah.
reason why, then bring them in. But there always needs a reason, and this is, I mean, this is the thing that you see is like we are all the same. I don't believe that coming from London, where as you both know, that London's got it's a very international city where people are coming from all over, you know, and because they come from all over, and you've met people from all over, everyone's got a story to tell. Um, and just because
Yeah.
of that, I've been around. I mean, I know people from all over the world because of it, you know, and some of them you're still in touch with, and that's the beauty of social media. Because my
Mm.
friends in Australia, who I've known since they were there back in the day, coming over working in pubs, you know, now they're big artists in Australia, and they're having big shows. And friends I grew up with back in the day in the UK, who are big stars now as well. Excuse me, I'm just going to switch off that. So I was watching the progress, and now you can stay in touch with them. You don't see them. There's many people I've not seen for over 30 years. You know, but I follow them on Instagram. I follow them.
Yeah.
I mean, but I haven't seen them.
Yeah. Oh, I just think it's just such an opportunity that I think I know you felt you belonged and you felt home here from day one. For Kathy and I, it took us a number of years to even
Mm,
really want to be here, to be honest with you. And sadly, that was when I started learning Danish, is when I didn't want to be here. I think that mental block with Danish took me for many, many years of A, wanting to be perfect in it and sounding perfect, which is really hard, isn't it? But also just that feeling of I just don't want to be here. I think really struggled. And I would just say to anyone, and I do say to my clients who've just arrived, just try and embrace it. And
mm.
I'm just going to say it's not going to be easy. Not going to be
No,
able to find
no,
a job,
no.
not going to be able
Mm,
to find your tribe, your people.
mm.
But honestly, once you do that, once you actually get a little, so a few people around, you just need one or two, get that support and motivation to make you feel like you do belong here.
They
What
can
would
always
you
come to
say?
BPOC. They can always come to BPOC. The Brotherhood
Yeah,
for Professionals of Colour come to us. We have so many people who are. The earliest we've had someone who was 3 weeks, a guy 3 weeks from New Zealand, 3 weeks in the country, and he found us. So, but come, I mean, and then he comes all the time because he realizes he's got a community of people just welcoming. They're curious about you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that you have to find your tribe. And you can choose how, but you have to. And you say it's difficult, it's hard, but the other side of it, you don't have to stay. It's a choice. That's the beauty of the world we live in. I've got clients who are all over the world, but one client I've got, she's in New York, based in New York, but sometimes she travels to the US, sorry, to other parts of the US, or she goes to the Caribbean, or she's in Mexico or whatever. Remote work to sync, like that wasn't possible back in the day. Now it's
Mm.
possible. So I think that people who are here, of course, if you've got an emotional attachment in regards of your partner is from here and they want to stay here, then you have to make it work. But if you haven't got that, and that's what we're seeing now with the numbers of people leaving. They're suddenly realizing that, okay,
Mhm.
Denmark's not treating us well, so we're going to go. And I mean,
Yeah.
last year, I think 53,000 people left.
Yeah.
A lot of people. A lot of
A couple
people.
of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel, Kathy, about this sort of the immigration feeling that we've got? I mean, Europe's going a bit crazy. Um, but this new government, new thinking, what's going to come out, and we're not going to get down the whole that route on this podcast. But what do you want Danes to know about immigration? Because they're frightened. It's like immigration frightens people. Have no idea why, but it does because they don't understand it. But what would we want Danes to know about us as internationals being here? Do you think?
I mean, the thing we've always said, and I think the three of us have said it, it's such a wide topic, but I think the hardest thing is to break any kind of stereotypes or bias, or if we don't ever come together and talk to each other. I think if it's always an us and them, or it will never be resolved. So I think it's hard to answer that because, as Stephen also said, we are very alike, all of us human beings. If you break us down like to the core, everyone is looking for the same thing. People want
Mm,
to be seen, they want to be loved, they want to be
Mm.
safe.
yep.
And that's everybody, no matter where they come from, and from what kind of circumstances. So I think sometimes thinking more simply in the sense of, people are coming, but what's the reason? And maybe having a conversation, like it's so trivial, but I always do this when I'm out walking. I always smile at people.
Mm.
And it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't, people don't want to, in general, harm us. They don't want to take over the country. They don't want to impose their cultures. A lot of people who come here, they come from different backgrounds, different circumstances, but they're looking to have a good life. They want to be a part of community, society. They want to participate. They want to give back. They volunteer as well. So I think we need to start looking from those perspectives and thinking, if I was abroad, what is it that I was looking for? And it's usually not something negative or dangerous or, that will bring harm. Most internationals that come want to learn about cultures. They want to find out as much as possible. They also want to be questioned and asked about their cultures. An example I always give is in my household, we celebrate everything. We also have Ramadan and Eid, and in this work that I'm in now currently, where I have a full-time job, I've also said to people, ask me if there's something that you're wondering about. How come you guys do this, or what does that mean when people I think the more we ask, curiosity breaks a lot of stereotypes. Having conversations, as Stephen said. So I think we have to start interacting if we don't want to continue fear-based behaviors and misconceptions about each other.
It's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, I think it's a good thing. Like I've seen there's a couple of things I follow on Instagram in the UK actually. And she goes into these areas where there is the like what we term the far right, and people who are listening to lots of misinformation. And she asks them a question and they go, "Oh, but what about that?" She goes, "Oh, have you thought about, well, who are you? Oh, you're one of those lefties." But then she actually starts having a dialogue with them. They go, "Oh, I didn't know that." And actually opens, and that's because these people need to be heard. Everyone needs to be heard. and we try and understand, right? And we don't agree, obviously, but we can try and understand. And I think that's an important thing. And I think that's what I love about my Danish family. They're so open.
Yes.
Like from day one, they're like, right, Lesley, you've got your first Christmas with us. What do you eat for
Mm.
Christmas? What can I buy? What would make you feel, happy because you're away from your family for the first time and that time. So they asked what foods I'd like, what I'd like to do. And my sister-in-law gets really excited when she's got a new tea and she's made scones and she'll go, and I've got lemon curd. I've got lemon curd just for you because she knows that's my thing. It's like that type of thing. Like they love it because I'm a little bit different, but also
For
they've just
sure,
made
for sure.
push themselves out of the way just to make me
Mm.
feel welcome, so it made a difference to me.
Right? The way
Mm.
you
Yeah.
would be for them. That's what I think. I think it's very,
Yeah.
very important for us as
Yeah.
to realise is that um, again, we are humans, and humans want the same things as Kathy mentioned there. I mean, and if we can provide that, what we're seeking is what we provide. But just understand that if you were back home, how would you react? How would you? And then what you said earlier, Leslea, that if you react in the way it says that I'll have my old friends rather than new friends, and that's what's happening here. So it's no different, it's absolutely no different. And this is what's so fascinating when you have these, I'm very good at what I call going to different tribes, different. So the French tribe, for example, and and then people say to me, "Do you speak French?" I said, "No, but you're always there." But yeah, but I love people. Come on, I love people, And you have nice food, you have nice wine. I mean, and a lot of you have been my friends for over 20 years, So come on, it's like, why am I not going to come? And maybe I should
Yeah.
learn French, Maybe I should, yeah. But different
It
tribes. It's
sounds
always
so,
good to
and
be
it's
around different tribes.
yeah, and it sounds so pretty. Let's face it, we all love French.
Yeah.
So as we'd like to add, folks, about belonging, and just I think for this, it's really about helping people who maybe are struggling still, or maybe
Yes.
just arrived and just need a little bit of support or help. What would you add just before we close?
Again, I think that we should definitely think. I mean, I think you should add in the BPOC if they want to come. They're always welcome. And if they write to me,
Let me just stop you there. Explain what that is because our listeners might not.
okay. So the Brotherhood for Professionals of Color is so BPOC.DK. You can find us on the website. But we are a community here in Denmark, and one of the things which I spend a lot of time with the bigger companies and the bigger like dance industry, dance event, etc., talking about this topic, the sense of belonging, and one of the things it says is that we couldn't wait for you guys, so we created our own. We created a space for ourselves because we couldn't find anything that was doing what we needed. We need to be to center um, around people who are predominantly black and brown, but now we've moved it so it's everybody, male, female, marginalized, underrepresented, or from the dominant culture. Everybody's there. Everybody's welcome, and we do once a month have a meetup around different topics. Last week we had a Nobel Peace Prize, no, not Peace Prize, Nobel laureate. He won the prize in 22, a guy called Morton Medell for chemistry. He was our speaker. And next month we're at Pandora in September doing an event around mental health, just before Mental Health Week. And then in October we're going to be at Nordea talking about finance, how to get mortgages, etc., etc. And then, of course, prostate cancer, which is very dear to our heart, in November at DFDS. So we have a whole series of events which are predominantly focused around um, career, mental health, very much around community, sense of belonging, and things that we think are interesting for you as an international or a local to come to. And again, you don't have to be. Many people think that when it says of color, you have to be of color because we think white is also a color. So everybody's welcome. And if you don't believe us, just look on our LinkedIn or website, and you'll see people, male, female, with, without. Everybody's welcome. Everyone's welcome.
Brilliant. Great.
Find your tribe.
Find your tribe, really important.
Mm.
Kathy, find your tribe. What would you say?
What would I just wanted to ask one more thing regarding the community. When people go on the website, they can just register for an event, or how
Yes,
does it
yes,
work?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's registered for event. I mean, at present, I mean, we keep talking about. We have, of course, a membership fee, which is 600 krona per year, which is one coffee outside of home for if you're working and if you're unemployed or we call them job seekers or student or a pensioner, then it's only 300 krona a year. But we haven't managed to start charging for our events. So this makes sure that we can actually we don't have to pay our speakers. We've got a network, so we can actually tap into our network to get events on. Yeah, you sign up to everything this year's for free. We say that. That's the bottom line. But apart from the Christmas party, where you have to pay for, but everything
Perfect.
else is for free. I mean, we've had
Okay.
Leslea. Leslea has been one of our
I
speakers.
was with last year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, on career. So
yeah, yeah.
we do spread it around. We do try our best to actually um, yeah, get good people who know their stuff in to speak. Like so next month, mental health. And it's quite an interesting one because we've got two psychologists coming, not one but two, and they are women and they're white women. And I realised that the vast majority, I think this year, what we're in now, we're in month 8, so that means we've done 7 events, and we've only had 2 men as lead speakers. All the time it's women. So we don't, when people, I mean, sometimes I
Love it.
always laugh when people think that because it's the brotherhood, everyone thinks it's only men.
Yeah.
Colour, they think it's only black or brown people, but everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome.
All right. So we'll see everybody at the events.
Yeah,
We'll
we
book
hope so.
it.
We hope so. You're welcome if you want to come. If you
Yeah.
are, especially if you're new, or even if you've been here for a minute and you want to work out what is this all about, because of course, is the dark months are coming. Like right now, it's nice and it's light, but when it gets dark, it can get a little lonely. And cinema, I mean, sports, whether you music, concerts, like all these sort of things, it's possible to just arrange with someone and say that I go to lots of museums. I meet people everywhere all the time at museums all over the country. I mean, I love them. I'm fascinated by art, but I've taken a lot of our people, like people from our community, to Louisiana, for example. And they've been there for
Mhm.
5 years, 7 years, 6 years, never been. I've taken them to the Conley, to the theatre, to the opera, all sorts of things they've never been. And I think so, I'm like, my good God, you live in a country which still supports the culture, and you're not supporting it. You must have to support it. And this is part and parcel of what I say. There's something what I call the social contract. The social contract, which is not a real contract, but you sign it when you come to Denmark. You say that if you don't want to participate in society, why are you here? Because you've got so much good. Participate, join,
Yeah.
join in, join in,
Yeah.
join in. Sorry, it's
No, no, no. I
It
would
was
just
great
add,
stuff.
I agree. It's perfect stuff. I agree with community for sure. That would be one of the main things. I would say have your curiosity hat on. Be
mm,
curious. Be curious.
mm,
Research, ask, meet people. Exactly. Don't wait. We've mentioned this before. Denmark is a country. No one is going to come on knock on your door and say, "Please come along."
yeah,
That's
yeah,
never going to happen. So you have to be proactive, even if you're brand new. You have to seek out places, people, go, be there, present yourself, give a nice firm handshake. Ask people a lot of questions and just be present, be present, be present. That's what I would say. What about you, Lesley?
Words of Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental. So if
Mhm.
anyone's
yes,
watching that series, which is actually brilliant, I would say try and find your tribe, and that's not easy. It's took me a while, but I've got a really good group of people for different things.
mm,
For helping with my company, and then my friends, and and Kathy and I have been friends for a number of years now. But I think sometimes it's about, do you know what? I always say to people, if you want to try dipping, come and join us.
Mhm.
We both winter bathe all year, and I just said, if you want to try it, I just think for people who are just starting out, that might not be their thing, but they get to meet a few of the people that
sure,
we dip with. Just it doesn't have to be about career. It doesn't have to be all super serious. It can just be the fun stuff. And then actually get people who are in the natural environment where they're having fun, they're relaxed. You're going to have really good conversations, and then hopefully opens up for friendships or whatever. But I think that's what I really struggled with in the first few years. Is not having those really that big tribe around me to sort of support me.
mm,
But yeah, it came. It comes eventually.
sure, sure. And again, I don't know if there's something to mention about. I mean, because right now we've got a lot of people with neurodiverse challenges. And in the old days, we would call them well, not to say neurodiverse people are introverts, but to say that if you're not good socially,
Yeah.
then you have to find a way because, like you said, Kathy, that the Danes are not going to reach out to you, so you have to find a way to reach out to them. And it can be, like you said, it could be gaming. If you play games online, then it could be there. I mean, whatever you do, you've got to say to yourself is that there are other people who are like you here you know,
Yeah.
and it's just about finding them. I mean, so whatever you feel, and if you want to, you come to the country and say you want to change, you want to try and do something completely different, then they're here as well. You know, one of the things which is really fascinating is that when you go out to, I don't know if you've got any friends who are chefs, but when you ever go to restaurants, when it's over, if you stay there and you meet the people working there, they're just from different backgrounds. And they've all got wonderful stories about why they came to Denmark and why they came to work in this restaurant or that restaurant. But it's so fascinating to meet people outside of their work, you know, to find out about them as humans, you know. That's one of the things I do talk a lot about in these bigger spaces is about don't treat internationals as resources, you know, because everyone talks about we need manpower, we need labor, treat them as humans. And then
Yeah.
if you go back to treating people as humans, then you'll find that life would be just much easier, you know, much
Yeah.
easier. You know.
And when I was saying to people as well, like I'm doing a workshop tomorrow, networking, don't think of it as like a transaction.
No, no,
Mm.
no, no, no,
Just think
no,
about
no,
it's
no,
just like
no,
it's
no.
it's just getting to know someone.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm,
that's all it is really. And I even have a talk tomorrow about introverts, how to network as an
okay,
introvert, and I have a cheat sheet for them. It's
fantastic,
just some of
fantastic.
ideas of how they can just walk into a room and not just feel completely overwhelmed.
Well,
Because I'm
again,
the
what you
opposite,
can
because
do,
we're all on the
yeah,
other end
yeah,
of the scale,
sure,
aren't we?
sure.
We're all extrovert. Yeah.
But we are the people that I don't know how it was for you, but for me, from a child, you know, from a very, very little child, I would always be the person who, if somebody was alone, you'd bring them into the group.
Yeah.
And it still happens today. Like
Yeah.
tomorrow I'm at a dinner in Leslea, and it'd be the same. If somebody's there on their own, I bring them into the group because that's the way I am. But it's not everybody's like that. So you've got to say to yourself, there are people like us, the good souls, who can actually spot the people who are not integrating, you know,
Yeah.
and bring them in. But if that person isn't there, just stand there. You don't have to say anything. You just could be there, you know, just to be part of the group, just to feel a little bit of warmth and energy.
Mm.
Um, but again, going back to you, it's unlikely you're going to come out if you are so much of an introvert that you don't want to meet other people. You won't come out of your door.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us and
You're
sharing.
very welcome.
You
I can come again next week if you want.
Oh, absolutely. We're definitely going to
love
have you
it.
back because there's got to be a part two to this because we literally could have talked all night, the three of us, couldn't we?
Very much so.
But thank you so much for joining us. And for our listeners, please subscribe on YouTube. Help us grow, help us get the message out, and follow us on Instagram. And we look forward to seeing you next time. But it's a goodbye from me, Lesley.
And from me, Kathy, a see you later. And thank you, Stephen. We appreciate you so much for your time and the golden nuggets. It's such a pleasure always to speak to you.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, these young ladies, as I call them, are definitely worth following. You say that they know their stuff.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.